Good morning, fellas. And
Good morning.
today's we
Morning.
today's we will discuss about the style and register and what is that? And the context. So I have make a summarize about the text. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, what are the main points in the text? So, language varies according to its uses as well as its users, according to where it is used and to whom, as well as according to who is using it. The addresses and the context affect our choice of code or variety, whether language, dialect, and style. Okay, the first one is address as an influence on style. Age, gender, social roles, whether people work together or are part of the same family may contribute in determining the degree of social distance or solidarity. There are two parts of address as an influence of on style. The first is age of address. People generally talk differently to children and to adults, though some adjust their speech style or accommodate more than others. And the second is social background of address. Most people speak differently to a greater or lesser extent in different contexts. And then accommodation theory. The first is speech convergence. It tends to it tends to happen when the speakers will like speakers like one another, or where one speaker has a vested interest in placing the other or putting them at ease. And the second is speech divergence, the act of distinguishing oneself speech patterns in order to draw an obvious difference between one group to the other to show the group's distinctiveness and not sharing with the speaker. And the third is how do speakers accommodate? People may accommodate to others by selecting the code or variety that is most comfortable for their addresses. And then the fourth is stylization. Stylization, I mean, and we often found it in the speech of comedians and singers who perform to entertain and amuse us. And the fifth is accommodation problems. In general, reactions to speech convergence and divergence depend on the reasons people attribute for the convergence or divergence. And then context, style, and class. The first one is formal context and social roles. In a formal context, the speaker will choose the style of speech depends on their status of social roles. And second is different styles within an interview. William Lebov demonstrate some ingenuity in this in devising ways of overriding this stranger effect to elicit a wider range of stylists within the interview context. And the third is colloquial style or the vernacular is the non-standardized forms of language, and it does not have any social official status. And the fourth is the interaction of social class and style. The styles changes when we speak to people from different social backgrounds, such as lower, middle, or upper class. And the fifth is hypercorrection. A pronunciation, word forms, or grammatical construction produced by mistaken analogy with standard usage out of a desire to be correct. And next is style in non-Western societies. Particular pronunciations, syntactic constructions, or vocabulary items may simply indicate a person's social group without also patterning for style. And then the last is register. The register is describes the language used by groups of people with common interests of professions. The first one is sport announcer. Uh, the language style used is quite clearly distinguishable from language used in other contexts. The first is syntactic reduction. Syntactic reduction is phrases in sentences used when conveying or interacting with the same group of people who also understand them. And the second is syntactic inversion, the act of inverting a sentence instead of following the common order. And then the third is heavy noun modification, the focus on interest at certain points during the sports announcer's spiel. And the last one is routines and formulas, is the certain form of semantic formula or strategy to describe a certain component of speech act with a narrow range of lexical items among speakers who practice it. So that's the summarize of this text. And what will we discuss in the group? We will discuss about the issues in this text, about the style and register and context. And we also discuss the relevant sources, establish a connection, and find out the answer of critical question from the inspector. But I think we will not discuss about the connection because Bila is not here. But we just have the words that I will tell the words that from Bila, but maybe we cannot define the words. So I think that's all from me. And now we will move to inspector to inspector, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Please, Chacha.
Um, Hello guys, I'm the inspector of this group, and then Pras, can you help me to open my files and share
Oh,
it to
oh,
our
okay.
friends?
Sorry. Wait. Can you see the screen, Chacha?
Okay, yes, I can.
Ah, yes.
Um,
Okay.
okay, let me start. And then the things that we will discuss today is about what key issues are presented in the text and why are they essentials. Basically, the issues in the text relates to how people talk about ethnic style, and for example, it refers to the way people talk based on their ethnicity or gender, regardless of the text. And then there are several issues that related to the kinds of language, and then the types of speech. There's also types of accents and type of pronunciation spoken by people in the world. This language can be influenced by regions, habits, and social and economic class or economic strata, and then also language vocabulary, speech style, and also how it used in a certain condition. So why are they essential? So these topics help us to know how to speak in some condition, and then how we use the language in uh, in our real life. And then how does the examples in the text help explain the issues? So the writer used many examples to explain each issues on the text. So there are several examples on the PDF, and then the examples contained in the text can help us to improve our understanding of the language. For example, there are examples of conversations that are influenced by the target person or the addressee, and then the dialogue was addressed by a teenage boy or teenagers to his friend's mother when he showed a friend of his adult friend a photo of their ski vacation. And from this example, the reader can understand why a person's ages or status affect a person's speaking style. And then there are many more examples in the text for each point discussed in the text. So let's start with I'm
Hello,
sorry because my connection is so bad. And have you uh, read the file, and then can you hear my voice clearly now?
yes.
Okay, let me continue. And then, so basically, there are so many more examples for each point discussed in the text, like the example for style, context, and the register. And then all the examples explain the real implementation and real usage of the language in some conditions. So there are samples, conversation samples, and also later samples in the text. You can find out. the example in the text, and then the purpose of this all of these examples is to help the writer to explain the real implementations of the text. Yeah, so um, I have three critical questions to be discussed in this group. The first question is, how does gender and age affect language use? And then the second questions, how do context and social roles affect the speech style of the speaker? And the last questions, how can you differentiate style and register in linguistic? So maybe we can discuss these three critical questions at the end of discussions. So yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Chacha, for sharing the the result. And before we move to the connector, I will spell mention the word wizard from Bila. Here is the word wizard. The first is elicit, uh, patronizing, vote, address, and embroiled. Uh, I think that's all. And now we move to the connector.
Okay, thank you, Pras.
Okay, please, Ipe, share the result, your result.
Okay, so could you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So for the first question, what other sources are relevant with the text and how are they relevant? And then, okay, so I found a journal, and the title of the journal is Translating Register, Style and Tone in Dubbing and Subtitling by Zoe Petit from University of Greenwich. So this article considers the manner in which the translators of a selection of subtitled and dubbed versions, English, French, approach the style and tone of the source text in relation to language register. A change in register tends to occur when constraints specific to subtitling and dubbing arise or an equivalent expression in French doesn't exist. So basically, this journal talks about how the register and style become different when it comes to subtitling and dubbing English language into French. And then for number two, what image will I use? So I made a mind map for you guys. And because actually Pras already explain the materials, all of it. So I will just make the summary about it. Sorry. Is it
Uh,
recording? Okay.
uh, please.
Uh, so we can see style, contact, and register here. The first one, style. Style is the different variants of or the other forms of language used for the same purpose by a particular situation. And then style have two branches. The first one is addressee as an influence. Addressee is who is the addressee, listener, or the people we are talking to. And it is usually seen from the intimacy of the listener, the background, the intensity when the speaker meet the listener, and It is determine the style or variations of the language we use. And then there are two branches of addressee as an influence. The first one is age of the addressee, and the second one is the social background of the addressee. And then move to the other branch of style, and it is accommodation theory. So accommodation theory is how to adjust when communicating between the speaker and the listener. So like Pras have explained before, we have speech convergence, speakers accommodate, speed divergence, and accommodation problems. And then after the style, we will move to the context. Okay. So for context is a concept or schematic structure which is exists in each individual. And then there are two branches of the text. The first one is context, style, and class. And it is contents of formal context and social roles, and then colloquial style or vernacular, and then the interaction of social class and style, and the last one is hypercorrection. And the other branch of context is style in non-Western societies. And then the last one is the register. So register is a variety of a language used for a particular purpose or in a particular setting. And on the register, we have routine and formula, synthetic inversion, and synthetic reduction. And the relationship between context and register is a continuity, and it is related to each other. And actually, those two things are already in ourselves. And then for number 3, how can I help my friends to understand the text better through image? So the mind map make the materials more structured and easier to understand. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ipe, for sharing. And I think now it's time to move to the question, Chacha, the inspector questions. So the first questions is how does gender and age affect language use? Uh, Anyone can answer this question?
Maybe I will try to answer it.
Yes,
So
please.
how does gender and age affect language use? The first one for gender, I think girls are more likely to use language in the context of emotional relationship with others, while boys are more likely to use language to describe objects and events. And then for age, the older the individual, and it is the more linguistic and conservative, and then the more sensitive to norm. Meanwhile, for the younger, it is the more receptive to innovation. So we will use more casual language to talk to the younger like that.
Okay, thank you, Ipe, for answering the questions. And the second question is how do context and social roles affect the speech style of the speaker? Anyone?
Um,
Okay, please, Chacha.
so I will try to answer questions number 2. How do context and social roles affect the speech style of the speaker? So the speech style will be influenced by the social roles. Like, for example, in a formal context, the speakers will choose the style of speech after assessing their status of social roles to the addressee. And For example, in an educational setting, a teacher will use a formal speech style to communicate with the students. And I think we types of examples in our class. When we try to talk to each other, we will use informal styles, but when we try to talk with our lecturer or our teacher, we will use the formal style like that. And it's also can be applied when you do some business, when you talk to your boss or your manager or um, some people that have higher yeah, like manager and then your boss like that, you can use formal language.
That's it, Chacha. Oh, I think that's all the answer of this of the second questions. Thank you, Chacha, for answering the question. And now the last question is, how can you differentiate style and register in linguistic? So there is a terminological distinction between register and style. Both are associated with a specific speech situation, but whereas register often refers to the specific vocabulary chosen and expected in connection with a particular speech situation. And style also includes grammatical. So register have no grammatical variation, but style has this has has it all. And I think that's all for our discussion about the style, context, and register. Thank you guys for sharing the result of our discussion. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys.